Muluki, Kitlalatela Muluki. Well, now we're going to be talking about retirement and all surrounding issues around retirement. And Elder Patrick Kulati is on the line to help us understand and decipher these issues. Good evening, my elder.
Hey, good evening, my brother. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. And how are you?
Man, I'm all right. I'm glad to be here.
Yes,
I
you have a
can't
wonderful
complain.
day.
Come again?
I'm saying, did you have a wonderful day?
I did have a wonderful day. I had a bit of a headache today, so I took a sick leave. I was not well in the morning, but I'm much better now.
Oh, fantastic. We praise God for that.
Thank you.
Well, tonight we are talking about retirement.
Yes.
It is that time of the period of one's life when they've got to hang the boots.
Yes, sir.
Or when they in boxing they say when they have to hang the gloves.
Yep.
They talk about boots.
Yes, you're right.
Perhaps those who are in corporate offices when you have to hang that laptop
Yeah, and put it aside.
and put it aside. All right. How would you correctly define for us what retirement is?
Man, I think there are two ways you can look at retirement, and one is from a financial point of view, where you put aside, you prepare for life after working. In other words, where you put away whilst you are working money, financial resources, and assets in order to be able to retire afterwards. And that's the purview of your financial advisor. And I want to put a disclaimer here to say that I'm not trained at all. Such that in my mind, the way that I look at this program, and I've termed it preparing for retirement holistically, because there are other elements of preparing for retirement which are not financial. And I'd like us to also talk about that. But I have spoken on my podcast with experts in this issue, especially financial experts. So I'll glean from some of what they are saying or what they've told me from the finance, and then we can also talk about these other elements which are also key for us to prepare to retire in such a way that we're not financially rich, where we have all this amount of money, but our relationships are broken down, our health is gone. I mean, our friendships are all gone. We have to balance this thing up. So that's why I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Fantastic. I'm actually looking very much forward to. And I know a couple of other people are looking forward to because that time, I'm not sure, what would you say the legal age for retirement is? Is it 65?
I think people can legally retire from the age of 55, if I'm not mistaken. It's called, I think it's early retirement. There are people who make those kinds of decisions based, on whatever, issues. But for many people, that's an impossibility. It's too early. They are still strong. They do not have the resources. For example, where I live, the the owner of this property uh, was 57, and he retired and went to live in the coast of KwaZulu Natal, having retired. And so it depends on a whole range of issues, including, people may get from their parents. This guy was a businessman, and they may get some money from the parents. They may get some inheritance from relatives, whatever the case may be, on the side of the spouse. But not all of us, especially those of us who are black, have that luxury. And for us, retirement is a completely new thing
Yeah.
altogether. The language of retirement is not something that we are cultured in, especially when you define retirement in the Western terms, in the financial terms that we see. So it's something that we who grew up poor, black, it's something that's really not really talked about on dinner tables.
Yeah.
We hardly ever talk about this from financial point of view. And what used to happen in the past, because we had a labor system where especially the fathers would leave their home and come to Johannesburg or KwaZulu Natal or Northwest, wherever there are mines, to go and work there. And then at the end of that life, they would go back to the Eastern Cape or to their rural areas. It could be Limpopo, it could be wherever, KwaZulu Natal, even some from surrounding countries, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia. They would go back and sort of retire, looking after their cattle, looking after their land. But the situation has completely changed now. It's
Yeah.
no longer like that. The context has completely changed. In the past, even those of us, of people who worked in the corporate world, in the financial industry, or wherever the case may be, those days, you would work for the company for 40, 50 years, one company, and the company would have prepared for them. At the end of that, they get given a certain amount of money, a golden watch, and then and they go away to retire. But things are no longer like that now. But I think when Azama, the biggest problem from what I read, and I
Yeah.
tested this with the finances, is that almost half of South Africans who were surveyed there was a study which is called the Retirement Reality Report, which came out in 2020. Half of the people who were sort of interviewed admitted that they didn't have a retirement plan whatsoever. And only 6 people said they had a plan and that they were sticking to that plan. And though even and then those that said yes they do, they are not happy with that plan, and they are unable to stick with it because the prices of things go up. There are economic recessions that take place. The people are losing their employment, and some of them cash in whatever retirement savings that they would have done. And so there are so many things that happen that impact on this topic of holistic retirement. And so we have what have been referred to as retirement crisis. And by the way, from my reading, this is not just a South African problem only. It just happens right across the world. And what makes it even more challenging is that, unlike in the olden days where people died in their 60s, because you see, the Industrial Revolution that took place, it is them that decided on this age of retirement, because because people were dying early in their 60s. People were dying early, and they would lose energy. They would not work, and they would go to the rural areas. And so we have been still carrying that culture, even though people live much longer now. People live in cities which are very expensive to live in. If you live in the city of Johannesburg or Cape Town or Durban, wherever it is, you have to have accommodation, which is very expensive. You have to travel. You need to have medical aid. All of those things are very, very expensive, such that people uh, decide not to save for their retirement because they're trying to meet the needs for now. And And I said to as a friend of mine who's also my financial advisor, Uma Jens, Cape Town, Ndakamhlama, I keep saying to them, the way that the financial advisor, some of them, not him, but some of them sell this whole issue of of retirement. They sell it sometimes in Western terms, in ngokwesilungu, because sometimes you hear someone say, people want to go on cruises. They want to travel overseas. They want to tour and go all over the place because of out of their retirement. That's more of a. I mean, there are some of black people who do that now. It can no longer be purely white and Western, but it's not something that we normally think about. Sometimes you want to retire with your bond paid, with having a good working car, a medical cover, and all of those kinds of stuff. And and many people still have rural homes where they leave the city to go back to their home where they were coming from. So those are some of the things that have to be taken into consideration. But now you and I spend our days and the many years in the city. We are used to having proper working transportation. We're used to having hospitals nearby. We're used to having shops and places to go. Now imagine if you're gonna go let's say to your rural home somewhere in Limpopo, where the roads are bad, where there's no internet connectivity. So what that means is that when you think about where you're going to retire, you are likely going to retire in the cities where you'll be closer to the medical attention. And that provision, that decision is so expensive itself, and so that means, therefore, from a financial point of view, people have got to put away money in order to do that. And now, those who are fortunate enough to be working, there are employers who do this on our behalf. So, in other words, where the employers contribute a certain portion, and then you also, as an employee, contribute a certain portion of your salary into some sort of a fund, a retirement fund. Then people ought to take those provisions and use them to save for the future, because in South Africa there are problems. Even the monies that are supposed to be given to old age people through grants, that money is embezzled, in many instances, by the officials that are supposed to be providing it for our old people. There are so many people that depend on the state for social security, not just old people. When you and I grew up, I knew that my grandmother and grandfather were the ones who would get indoda. Used to call it indoda. Inkamkam, yeah. We're the ones. Now, what has happened is that basket has suddenly dramatically increased to include many, many other categories of people, including people that may have children, fall pregnant, they cannot afford, children that are abandoned, old age people. There are so many of these grants now. All of that relies on the state. And on top of that, you have the money, there's this corruption that's taking place. So that means that if I'm here thinking about my retirement in 20, 10, 15 years' time, I have to think about what's going to be happening to me and my family around access to health, um, access to finances, to money? Will I be able to live on what government is providing, and live in a way that is dignified, respectable, and decent? The answer is that no, it's not going to be possible. So what then the financial people are saying from a finance point of view, for those of us who are having to balance the demands of the now, like for example, I know I know someone who had a debt and decided to resign from her job and then cashed in that money in order to pay for the debt that she had. But unfortunately, that person struggled to get another employment.
Oh my goodness.
You see, they struggled to get another employment, and that money is now gone. So what it means is that preparing for retirement is a mindset thing before it becomes a financial or an emotional or material, whatever it is. It's a mindset thing. You're thinking about yourself in the future. And you're saying, what kind of person will I be? Not just in terms of where would I live, where would I get services, but what would I be doing with my time? Yes.
Yeah. Prophet, as you are talking and as you are outlining the situation at retirement, I mean, this is literally not very far for many people, actually.
Yes. I mean, I've been thinking about it a lot myself.
In fact, it's scary, and I'm becoming even very much anxious as you are talking, because I think as Africans, you said earlier, we don't really prepare much for retirement. What we think, we are sold a European type retirement where people think that, okay, when I get to retirement, I'm going to have a chance to travel the world. I'm going to be in the Bahamas. I'm going to be seeing the Eiffel Tower. I'm going to be, all of these things. But the truth of the matter is, it may not even be practical with what you're going to get as a package, retirement package.
Exactly. It may not be, because the value of money with inflation and all those things, I'm not a financial person, but the value of money keeps going down. The government keeps borrowing money from people all over the world, and our children are going to have to look. So basically, they have got to pay for that. So basically, what is happening here is that you've got to look at yourself. In other words, you and the people close to you. But another element which I heard someone speaking on, but I thought that that was powerful, where they were saying what white people, especially in the Western world, have done, who have been playing in this game longer than us. They buy what is called a life cover. And then they say, I'm going to buy a life cover, let's say of 2 million, whatever, so that if I die, then that money gets taken over by children and family and so on. But then many of us say, not just here in South Africa, but many Black people say, I won't be able to enjoy that money, I'll be dead. But what this guy says, it is that they are referring to when they're talking about generational wealth. But it's no longer about you. It's no longer about you traveling to the Bahamas, doing all of those things. Because you see, we as Black people in Africa and in the diaspora have a huge responsibility to create generational wealth for the future people that are coming. It's a huge thing on our back because we are the first, most of us, for example, are the first to even go to university.
It's first generation.
It's a first generation. Many of us are the first in many, many respects of working in the places that we work in. Some members of our families in the past would they could not actually do that. I mean, some of us are the first to live in some of the suburbs that we live in, because and then we still have to make sure that family members, extended family members, are supported. And so there's a huge responsibility on this generation. And here's another problem. This generation that we are is a generation that lives from salary to salary. So, in other words, if I lose my job my job, that means that for that month, that's it. I'm not going to be able to deal with my financial need responsibilities. So we have nothing that we have underneath us. I remember when I was living in Cape Town. So this guy, my neighbor, a friend of mine. Now we became friends after that. Great man, but at the time, he was thinking about the value of the area that we lived in, and so he then decided to renovate his house. It actually looks beautiful, and this and that and that and the rest. And so he says to me, "Hey man, I have this builder here who's reasonable, great guy who was working with me. I want to recommend it to him." So I said to him, "Okay, thanks. When I'm ready, I will get in touch with him to renovate." But then he starts talking to me about the fact that, "Hey man, listen, the value of this area, we want it, by these renovations that we're doing, we want it to be of a certain level so that it doesn't go down." So then I said to him, "Listen, man, I understand that, but I'm not in a position to renovate my house now. And when I am, and it's my decision, I'll make it." But then I also say to him, because I knew this, he had told me before, and I say to him, "You and I, even if we were to earn the same salary at our jobs, you are living at the house that was given to you by your parents.
Yes.
This house that you're living,
don't pay it anymore.
Yeah. You have a foundation, a long, strong foundation under you. So don't expect me to actually do what you have done at the pace that you want to do it. And I've got other priorities which are not what you are saying. I do want to make sure that this place, the value of this place is kept high. But for now, you are in a better position to do that because you are standing on a solid ground, which is your intergenerational wealth that was given to you by your parents." Man, he was shocked. He was shocked. And I said this, you need to understand that we Black people have got none of those kinds of resources. When our parents die, most of us, if they're lucky, they leave the house.
Yeah.
They leave that for everyone. And then
it belongs to everyone, basically.
It belongs to everyone, And in many cases, there's a lot of struggles and fights between families about that. But it becomes a place for everyone. After my wife and I got married, I'm going to come to this point now. And we were talking about this. We were living in Cape Town. So we discussed the issue. If things were to go south here, whilst we're here. In other words, you're not working, I'm not working, and then we have to we can't rent, we're renting a place then, and so on. Which township in this city do you think we should go to? And so we sat down and said, man, this township would be better, this for this and that other reason. And then I said to her, so that let me push it further to understand, because we're starting a journey together. That was 22 years ago. We're starting a journey together as a married couple. So I just needed to get a sense that we're looking at these issues in the same way. In other words, we're willing to start afresh. We're willing, where life is taking us down, let's say from an employment point of view, we're able. So I said to her, where do you think we would do if, for example, we cannot even rent now in the township because we agreed with Southla Kuala. And then she said to me, okay, we'd either go to your home back in the Eastern Cape, and then start afresh. Start afresh. And I said from that moment onwards, with this woman that I'm with, this is the way, this is the kind of person that I want to go, because life changes. And that, there are waves, there are moments when you can no longer afford certain things, certain lifestyle, or where you send your children to certain. So there has to be an agreement that when those things happen, we're prepared to scale down a little bit. So all of these things are preparations that we do now for the retirement that we are going to do. So it's a preparation, because it's a mental preparation for what life can offer at any time. What do we do when our dreams do not go the same way that we had planned?
Yeah.
Because things change. In 2008, we had the whole world decimated, finances of the world decimated by the financial crash. Now we have COVID, something that no one even anticipated. Actuarial science students or professionals, futurists, analysts, no one predicted what was going to take place. So in our thinking also, we need to have those things in mind to say, okay, right, what if things do not go well? Where do we go? Are we prepared to go siyohlala garage ekhaya okanye at the back house and then breathe? And that's the what I can call the value or the benefit of being black. Because and we need to keep that, to be able to say, instead of trying to push kunzima, you want to be like to keep up with the Jones when things are not well. We need to be prepared to scale down a little bit and try again to get back. So those are some of the remarks I just wanted to make as we are delving deeper into this conversation.
Prophet, as you are talking, this thing is much scarier.
That is why many of us don't want to talk about it.
No, we don't want to talk about it because I think we're ill-prepared.
Yeah.
In fact, not even prepared. And I do think that the next time we talk about it, perhaps let's organize a financial planner. And we'll talk about the financial side.
Yes.
And the financial ruin that a person can find themselves after retirement.
Exactly.
Because at this time, that income that I'm used to is no longer there.
Yeah.
The question is, how am I going to make that money now after retirement?
Exactly.
It's a critical question that one has to ask themselves, and that is not to be thought about when a person gets to retirement. At that time, it's too late.
It's too late. You see, that is why you need to create the mindset. Now, that's why I was using this example of being willing to go to the level that you can fit within your financial means, so that you carry that culture and that mentality with you throughout your life, so that you don't get to your 50s, your 60s, and you realize that, man, I'm no longer willing to take a lower standard of living, if for you that is lower. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes we get used to to these cars that we drive, to these houses where we live. Those of us who are fortunate, a few of us, I might add, who are fortunate to still have employment. And I'm saying that because I want to also transition to these other areas of preparing for retirement, because you see, there are many other ways. So let me just talk about and put to bed this side of the finance. So in other words, from what I spoke, I mean, recently I had an interview with Mr. Gaba Mvusi and then another guy who was a financial planner. Just forget his name now. Vokes. They came to my program and they in the podcast, and they said, they talked about financial planning. We need to have a financial plan. And then when you do that, don't be scared to share financial information with your financial advisor. Your salary, your debts, all of those kinds of things. But sometimes people want to hide some information, and these guys cannot help them. So we need to have a financial plan that is based on reality. And I also think that what they also said is that whilst we are still working in our 30s, 40s, 50s, we need to make sure that we pay, if we're having a bond, for example, we paid off before retirement, because that would be a big, especially the question you were talking about now, in terms of saying, how are we going to live in retirement when we still have a huge bill of a bond to pay, because the income that you would have been earning from your work would no longer be there. All right. So the vehicles need to be paid off. A friend of mine was here recently, and he says to me, man, he was retrenched during 2020 during this COVID. And so,
about retrenchment yesterday.
Sorry?
I'm saying we were talking about retrenchment last night here on the show.
Oh, you see, yeah, it's a big thing. So he was one of those people that unfortunately lost his job through retrenchment. And so then what he says, you see, this car was fully paid. And when you look at it, he looked well after the car. He had fully paid it, and then it carried him and the family for all the time that they could. Unfortunately, he has got another job now. So the point that you are making, we need to make sure that things like that, cars, and as much as possible, are paid up early, so that you don't get to that point.
Before you transition to the other elements of retirement, I also do want, because I think earlier on you spoke about the model, the model that we have today, which is not necessarily an African model, because we live in a state, for instance. So when people buy these homes within the estates for security reasons, because crime is a problem in our country. So people have to live in the estates for security of their families and themselves. But the downside of it is that while the house is now already paid off, you still have to pay the levies until you die. And
the levies are high.
It becomes important because, I mean, some of these estates, the levies are in the tune of 5,000-7,000 rand.
Sure, just the levies.
Just the levy. So it is important that people choose wisely when they buy these places, because while the bond is done, dusted, and you no longer own the house, you will still have to pay levies. At which point, when you retire, check if you're going to be able to afford that with whatever that you're planning to do after retirement.
Exactly. You're mentioning a very good point, which is where someone like a financial advisor would come in handy to be able to help you anticipate those kinds of costs. Because we forget that. We forget, for example, that the older you become, the older you need medical aid more. You know, the older you need medical aid more. So if you can afford it, I think it's something that we need to do. And I think earlier on we talked about the culture. I think it's something that we need to start talking about with our children. When my first time, I was thinking about it to talk up to a financial advisor about these things, retirement, annuities, and so on. You know, I think I must have been about 26 or 27, you know, and I had never had that conversation before at home. You know, I had never known anything about that. And, so I was reluctant to do it, very reluctant to do it. But fortunately, sense prevailed maybe a year or two later. And then I started with something of that nature. But what I'm saying is that we need to transition in further to say, how do we have these conversations with our youngsters and young kids when they are still young, so that they understand what these things are about? That is a way of helping everyone prepare holistically for retirement of this family. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, Prabhat, before we transition, I want us to just take a very short break, after which we are going to continue. So we're just going to take a brief song as you are also just collecting your mind back into what we are now going to be transitioning into. Is that all right?
Thank you, sir. That's fine.
All right. Thank you so much. It is now 24 minutes after the hour 8 o'clock. My name is Zama Malote. We are listening to the AWR, the Adventist World Radio, powered by the SID Media. On the line, we are speaking to Elder Patrick Kulati, who is taking us through all these very important conversations about retirement and what to prepare for. When we come back, we are going to be transitioning and talking about other elements of it. But for now, let's enjoy it. AWR. Powered by SID Media. If people care about people, Jesus would be seen. And if people would help other people, Jesus would be seen. If people love one another, they would learn what happiness is. But if people would learn to love people, caring for each other's needs, is now 27 minutes after the hour 8 o'clock. That is from the Herald. Wow, beautiful, beautiful music.
Beautiful indeed.
That we grew up listening to. If People is the name of the song lifted from the album Don't Give Up, Don't Give In. Our WhatsApp line 0734703520. Our telephone line 012 If you want to join in the conversation, please hit us up that. Otherwise, on our Facebook page, Adventist World Radio SID Media. Our Twitter handle, FASID Media. Prophet, let's transition.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There's one last issue just before I transition, which is called ageism. You know, in South Africa, I guess the reason is because many of the young people are not working. So a person who gets older is quickly chucked out of the system, and early, and so that means that so that they can make space for other people to come on board. But if you go to other places, I mean, if you travel, let's say on what is that airline in America, Delta. I mean, I've seen old ladies there and old gentlemen who are air hostesses and hosts and things like that. They still work. I mean, I used to work for an organization whose the CEO was the international CEO was based in Atlanta. His PA was an old lady in, I think, around about 66 or 67. But yeah, in other countries, the older people are valued for their contribution and experience and so on. And so here in South Africa, there's a lot of ageism, especially when it comes to to older people. So we need to anticipate that we might be, when you get to 60, 58, 60, they might ask you to leave earlier or whatever the case may be. But now I want to, sorry, go ahead.
I suppose it's also a problem of, high unemployment, especially among the young people.
Yes.
So the older ones have had their share, they now need to excuse us, and then let's get the young people on board. So
yes. Yeah, this is where now I want to transition in, because that means then if that is going to be the case, we need to spend time whilst we are still in employment, those of us who are fortunate, to then prepare to establish other things, businesses, they call them side hustles, and other income streams that we can use the skills that we have developed to begin to prepare for the future away from work, so that you can first be mentally charged and be mentally engaged when you're retired. You could have something that you do. I'll just make a simple example of myself. I'm a trained coach, integral coach. I did coaching at UCT Graduate School of Business. So the intention there is to, whilst I'm working full time in my day job, I also begin to start coaching people, to establish this coaching. So I coach leaders and people, ordinary personal in the corporate. I coach leaders in the corporate world, in the NGO space, as well as in the church leadership and ministries, to help them to basically, do whatever they need to do to become better people. And I also do things like consulting on strategic planning and things of that nature, facilitations. That's one area. But I also coach. I have a company which is called a Black Men's Coach, is to coach young Black men to be better men in the future, better fathers, better leaders, better employers, better employees. I've got a whole program that is designed for both those that will be circumcised and those that would not be circumcised. Because you see, what happens is that we think that circumcision, for those who believe in it, we think that it makes people men, but it does not. So we need to prepare. So I have sessions that I run with young men to prepare them on values, like things like, for example, goal setting, decision making, leadership competencies, ability to executive presence. In other words, how do you? So I work with them in order to prepare them. We deal with gender issues so that we do not have men that would rape women, that would do all those things. What I'm trying to say with that is that I'm already anticipating what I would like to do beyond my full-time employment, so that when that time comes, I would have already started the transition. I would have already established the networks. I would already be doing that work on a part-time basis. The systems would be there and all of that. I'm writing books, for example, like there's a book that's coming out in the next few months that I'm writing. So what I'm trying to say is that we need to think about how we can maximize and use the skills that we already have. I've got leadership skills, I've got coaching skills, I've got speaking skills. How can I use those things? How can I use? You can have accounting skills, you can have auditing skills, you can have legal skills. How can you apply those? You can have media and broadcasting skills. How can you then add value in the future to much more bigger audiences than your denomination, because we are being sent to go outside of our denominational focus, but we need to stay pure to be sold throughout the whole world. So what I'm trying to say is that we then have to start thinking about how are we going to occupy our time later, and we need to start doing those things now and make sure that we can add value, because what the world pays for is value. If I'm sitting with you on a coaching one-on-one, and let's say, for example, you are an expert, you are an accountant, but you want to transition to becoming a leader that can address the board or address leadership. In other words, not from an expert point of view. I need to be able to help you to be able to achieve that. That's the value that I'm adding to you as a coach, so that when you then achieved that, you have paid me for something that I give. So what we need to do in preparation for retirement, we must think about preparing for refirement, not retirement. Refire ourselves. All right. We need to replace the T with F. We want to, because you need to transition to another career, but that career would have been based on what you have already been doing. If, let's say, you are a pastor or whatever the case may be, you used to speaking, you used to counseling people, you used to grief, you used to do marital counseling. Now you can do what they call monetizing that, put it out there as the value that you add. I like what Pastor Dr. Mngabisa did. After his retirement, from what I hear, he's enjoying his life because he's doing what he loves. And he can do that until he's old and he cannot do it anymore. So in other words, so I think that's the point I want to make, is that, you see, those are the things. The other thing I want to talk about, if I was in a workshop and I had a board, I would write a circle, 2 circles. One is a circle of work. The other is a circle of life, all areas of life. So during our working time, there's a gap, there's a barrier between those 2 worlds. Many of us dedicate a whole lot of our time, including myself, on work. My wife always complains about that. Work, such that many of us, we do not form relationships with our spouses. We do not form working relationships with our children. We do not form lasting and great growing relationship with our friends. We break down all of those kinds of things with our communities, so that we focus so much on work, such that our life In church, for example, we don't connect. We talk about business. That's all we do. We want tenders and all of that kind of stuff. We do not connect at a genuine level. Some things that you need when you are retired. So,
Because at retirement, you're not chasing. It's not a red race.
no,
You
no.
have scaled down your pace,
Mm,
and what you need more,
mm,
as you are rightly saying, is now relationships that are solid.
exactly.
That have been built over years.
Exactly. And those relationships include relationship with our immediate families. All of a sudden, you realize that, man, we're at the emptiness, but I do not know this woman I'm living with here. I do not know this spouse that I'm living with here. Because whilst we were working, we were just talking about children, talking about work. And so we need to emphasize on making sure that we balance work and life, including developing hobbies, things that we do, keeping in touch with people that you are friends with, phoning them, contacting them, meeting them up, and all of those kinds of stuff, so that when you don't focus so much on yourself and the work that you lose touch with these other people. That is one way of preparing for wholesome in a holistic way for retirement. Because then the other one is the issue of physical and mental health. As Adventists, we believe in the health message. We must not be apologetic about that. Even when we fail to live up to it, we must not denigrate it. We must just accept that we can't live up to the healthy lifestyle. But then there's also those of us who are on the other extreme who use health message to bash people and make people uncomfortable and all of that. We don't need that. But the point of the matter is that our physical and mental health is something that's important so that we can become effective even when we are older. So that means that we have to invest in it now. Exercise, read, do all those kinds, eat well, because that's an investment into our refinement later so that we can live longer to make longer impact in the world. And I think now we all know about the whole issue of mental health. And these are things, by the way, those things I'm saying here, I'm not saying I'm perfect in them. I'm just stating them there as an ideal that we have all to work towards. I'm failing in so many of these issues, but I'm clear that these are things that we have to maybe work towards so that we can refire in a holistical way.
07347035520. Our time now is 20 minutes before the hour and 9 o'clock on the line. We are having Prophet Elder Patrick Kulati. We're talking all things retirement. Prophet, I want to just step 2 steps, 3 steps back.
Yes, sir.
Because earlier you talked about us having to prepare for retirement much earlier, which means that find time to do things that you are going to do at a point when you reach retirement and you are no longer in that full-time, fast-paced work environment. You now do what you've already been building up over the last number of years.
Yes.
The challenge there, and I don't know how we can advise or comment on that to the listener, is that in this full-time employment, there's so much demand for our time. There's deadlines to be met, and work is piling up. Now, what's worse is that with the advent of COVID-19, people are able to work at home, which means that there is no time limit. People are working throughout, whether they're in the office, whether they're in the home, to the extent that people hardly can find time to do anything else. And what you said is important, that relationships get lost in the countries. I don't know how we can, because I know that our European counterparts who leave the country are able to excuse themselves to say, no, it is now time for family. I'm mean, I remember when I was still in the corporate world,
Yeah.
my boss at the time
Mm.
would very clearly say, guys, I'm leaving. It's now family time. I need to go home.
Mm.
Not extend himself beyond what he needed to,
Mm.
unless it was absolutely necessary. But with us, on the other hand, we've got to please bosses, we've got to please managers or supervisors or line managers
Mm.
to an extent that when we're requested to put in more time, to put in more effort, of course for an incentive because we need that money.
Yes.
We do it. Unfortunately, the downside while earning that cash
Mm.
is that the downside there's a lot that is lost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
How do we traverse that?
Man, it's a big challenge. It really is. It's something that, as I said, I'm struggling with it myself. It's it's a struggle of our times. That the more time, if we were to be given another 2 hours extra, we would find things to do with that time as well. Yes, because there's no lack of things. Some people say we talk about time management, but in actual fact, the true skill of leadership, as far as I'm concerned, is personal management. Because you see, the time never changes. The time is like that. The work never ends. It's just like that. So what we need to learn to manage ourselves in how we respond to that. Now, I've been noticing something which I realize that there are people, men, who I regard as very, very busy, high profile people. They speak, they travel, they do this. But these people still find time to write books. They still find time, yeah, to read. And I'm just thinking, man, how is it possible? I think in my own little scale, I'm busy. But there are people, multiple. Someone can say they have got resources and so on, but some of them are not like presidents, but these are just people who are leaders, and they still are able to deliver on many things. They have podcasts. They're writing books. They're doing this. They speak. They still work. And some of them are teachers. They're lecturers at universities. And you ask yourself, here I am, but this person is much more. So the issue is, if we really wanted to pay attention to this matter, it's something that we can do something about. We can plan our times, because most of the time, I'm talking about myself, I know. I spend quite a bit of time on my phone, checking things on Facebook, YouTube, whatever the case may be. And sometimes I need to pull myself back and say, let me focus for this time on this work that I need to do. So we might have to just manage ourselves better in terms of how we use the time that we have. Because sometimes we can produce more work if we can put much more effort in planning and designing our time much more effectively. But unfortunately, we allow so many distractions to come through. So the point I'm trying to make is that this is where I I decided, man, I've been having this book in my bosom for all this time. Let me write it. And I tell you, man, my business did not stop. All the things that I had been doing, I carried to do. But I gave myself, wake up in the morning, type X number of words, write, do this. When I have a moment in the afternoon, 30 minutes, you write half a page or a couple of paragraphs and all of that kind of stuff. So what I'm saying is that if we really, really want to have the time for the things that are important to us, in the context of all the busyness, because you see, busyness has become a badge of honor in this environment, but it is leading to burnouts. It is leading to depression and stress. emotional and mental health problems. And we need to understand that we are not made to be the machines that the industries are doing it. And some of us are leaders are making decisions about how other people spend their time. We are the ones who send a message in the evening to say, I want a report tomorrow morning or something like that, while some of us are the receiving of that. So both of us have got to understand and respect boundaries, that this is a time for family now. I must stop sending WhatsApp messages in the middle of the night, emails in the middle of the night, and sending people and expecting them to respond or do something about that. And we need to also, those of us who are recipients of these instructions and messages, engage in discussions to say that the longer I recharge and spend time with my family, or I do the things that I like, I want to play soccer, I want to go to the gym, I want to do this. Those are the things that are enabling me to work better in my job, you know. But there are some of us who spend time at work, watching YouTube videos of preaching and sermons and all of those kind of stuff because they're spiritual, instead of doing the work that they are employed to do. So there's a responsibility on both of us, because you see, we need to have what is called personal effectiveness.
Yeah.
And these are the areas that I coach on, to say, how do we become personally effective? Because in life you deal with what is given. For example, the time or the job that you do. You cannot do anything about certain things, but what you do, you can do something about is yourself and how you respond. I think it was Covey, Steve Covey, who talked about this space between the stimulus and the response. And within that space, it's a space where we can choose. Unfortunately, we allow a lot of distractions and things to take our attention from what is important for us to do. And for me, I think this is where we need people to guide us, people to help us in order to be effective personally.
One of the things I've noticed, Prophet, it is now, by the way, those who are listening, it is now 11 before 9. We are literally chasing right to the end of our conversation here. Prophet, I noticed that during the time of retirement, those who remain inactive at that time deteriorate very quickly. As opposed to those who are active. I mean, we can even go to the olden times when people would go to plow in the farms. That activity, movement of body, blood, it is a form of exercise, so to speak. And so when you're retired, you don't, in my language, we say, out chicken alarm.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it.
Yeah, he's sitting there watching the sun going to sunset.
Exactly, and you don't just sit and do nothing and just watch the sun and do holidaying, because holidaying is effectively doing nothing, because you're not actively involved, you're not stimulating your mind. And unfortunately, at that time, when you are an older person, over 65, the more you remain inactive, the quicker you deteriorate in your health.
Yes, I think there's studies that have found that people, as you say, just find out that, man, I have all this time and I've got nothing, then they just die from heart attack, whatever the case may be, because and imagine this thing: you invest 40 years of your life in this work, and you're putting away money if you are lucky, is saying that I will use this money when I retire. But when you get to that time, you can't enjoy that because you die quickly, or you just deteriorate and so on. So what this means is that we need to start a regime of being active, being meaningfully active in terms of physical exercise. being creative. You see, when I Zama, you see, God created us to be creators. I was telling a friend of mine, PE last week, one of the reasons why, um, you know, I personally do not necessarily enjoy singing in these groups that we form, um, is because is because of this reason. We sing songs that were written by Wayne Hooper in 1950, and those songs are nice. But I was reading a story of how he wrote the song "We Have This Hope." Those songs are powerful and they are long lasting. But that was their creativity. They used what God had given them to be creative, such that Wayne Hooper died doing what he had been doing all his life. And we're still singing his music now, but we do not write our own. We do not write our own poetry. We do not write our own books. We're not creating our own products and services. The point I'm trying to say is that when we can restore and recover our capacity, our inherent capacity to create, just think about an email that you're going to write. If you want to write an email to someone on a blank page, and after a couple of minutes, that page is full, you have put words together to create meaning out of it. You can also use the same logic to create a business idea. You can also create an online course. You can decide that you want to speak on YouTube for 10 minutes on media impact or auditing, whatever it is. You are creating something. That's why it's called content creation. So the point I'm saying is that has no age. That has no age. So in addition to physically active and so on, we need to think about other forms of being creative, of exercising the creative capacity that is created within us. If some people, can start new hobbies, learn instruments of songs, and all of that, read about Africa, for example, read about some subject, that you didn't know about, understand it, speak about it. Those are the ways in which we can keep ourselves active way beyond the time of retirement. And that is what I mean by the word refinement. It is because you are now learning new things. And many of us are scared of technology. I'm one of those people, scared of technology. For my programs, I used to get someone to hire someone to do posters for me, because I just didn't think I could learn to do it. But my younger brother showed me. And the posters that I now put out, I do them myself. You know what I'm saying? So there are many other things like that, video editing, the kind of work that you are doing in that station and so on. Those are new skills that we're learning to be able to do. You can code now, you can design a website by learning on YouTube. So we need to be people that are eager to learn as we transition into a new digital world. How do we interact with that? So even for those people that are retiring, then they are able to interact at that level and without being childish. There are people that sometimes appear on this social media being childish and do all sorts of things like kids. I'm I'm not talking about childish. In fact, in the second book that I'm writing, I compare between childlikeness and childishness. Yeah. So we have to be childlike, but not necessarily childish. Yeah.
Protect our time is flying so quick, and there's so much to actually go through. because we're now left 3 minutes literally before the top of the hour, and in fact we are not going to be able to consume that whole 3 minutes because the next programs have to come in. Because one of the things, and I would like you to also just wrap it up nicely for us, one of the things that is difficult for people is, and I suppose it's one of the things we're going to have to talk about in the future, how to, the career change is a very scary thing for people. And you're not speaking to career change necessarily, but you're talking about reskilling. You're talking about learning new skills. And people say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So, I don't know. Please wrap it up for us.
Yes. Now, fortunately, human beings are much more intelligent than dogs. And unfortunately, we have tended to apply that to us. Yet the people that came up with it intended it for animals. But dogs can learn new skills. We can learn new skills at whatever point, unless we are sick or anything of that side. So what I'm trying to say today is that we need to prepare for retirement holistically. We need to get advice from qualified people. In the area of finance, let's get financial advice, because what we're talking about here, I'm a layman, I do not know anything like that. Now, part of what I was talking about on the other side, which is career coaching or transitional coaching. There are people who coach in terms of how do you manage your transition? What strategic plan do you put in place? I happen to be in that space as well. What are you planning to do over the next 5 years? And so on. Those are the things that we can do ourselves, so that we can become better people at that stage. Are you there, Zama?
And to prepare for retirement in a holistic manner, not only financially,
yes,
but also physically from our bodies and mentally as well.
Exactly. And relational, with our relationships as well.
Yes, with our relationships as well, because they're going to be very important in a time when a person now has retired, and you're not going to tap into new relationships at that time. It's not going to work. The relationships have to be built now for that time.
Yes, sir.
That, we've run completely out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming through and giving us your time. I do want to promise the listener that it is not the last time that we're addressing such issues. Thank
you. Really appreciate this time. All the best to your listeners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that was thank you, Prophet. That was Kulati, who is a coach among others, who's talking to us about retirement and all things about holistic retirement. My name is Zama Malote. It's been good to be with you since 6 o'clock tonight. It is now 9 o'clock on the dot. Well, from me to you, it is indeed all love.